The night sky above the alien world was filled with slow-moving stars and the faint glow of broken warships drifting across the upper clouds. The war between humans and the Royal Zarian Empire had ended 3 months ago, but the ruins still smoked across the green deserts. A single human soldier named Ethan lived in the royal capital, a city made of silver towers and living stone. He had saved the alien princess during the last battle, and because of that, the queen had ordered that he stay inside the royal palace. She called it a place of safety, but to Ethan it felt like a cage built of gold. Every morning he woke to the sound of soft alien music outside his window. The garden below was filled with blue flowers that swayed without wind. Guards in shining armor stood on every corner. Their eyes followed him whenever he walked. Ethan had no weapon, no communicator, and no word from Earth. The queen said she was protecting him from angry nobles who hated humans, but the more time passed, the more he believed she was protecting her secrets instead. The princess, whose name was Lyria, was unlike any royal he had ever known. Her skin was pale silver, her eyes deep violet like starlight reflected on water. She was gentle but carried sadness in her smile. She often came to the garden where Ethan was kept, bringing strange fruit and trying to speak in human language. Over time, her words grew clearer, her tone softer. "You miss home," she once said. "Yes," he answered quietly. "But maybe I miss freedom more." Lyria looked down at her hands. "My mother believes all humans are dangerous. She keeps you here because you fought too well. You showed them courage they do not understand." Ethan gave a tired laugh. "Saving a life shouldn't be dangerous. I only did what any soldier would do." "Not every soldier would stand against 10 hunters alone," she said. "Not every man would risk himself for someone from another world." He turned his gaze to the distant towers. "And yet I'm treated like a weapon locked away." She stepped closer. "If I could change it, I would." For a moment they stood silently, the sound of alien birds echoing through the garden. Then Lyria touched the stone wall and it shifted like liquid, forming shapes that glowed with soft light. "This palace listens to my mother's will," she said. "Every wall, every door. That is why you cannot leave." Ethan studied the living stone. It pulsed faintly under his fingers, almost like a heartbeat. "So the walls themselves are her soldiers," he murmured. Lyria nodded. "She does not sleep. The palace hears her dreams." He looked at her, sensing fear behind her calm words. "Are you afraid of her?" Lyria hesitated. "She is my mother and my queen. I love her, but she fears losing control more than losing her heart." That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He sat near the small window watching the faint auroras dance above the capital. The same stars that guided explorers on Earth burned above this alien world, but they felt unreachable now. He thought of his unit, of his home, of the message he never got to send. Every day he hoped a human ship would come for him, but none ever did. The next morning, soldiers entered the garden carrying sealed chests. Inside were pieces of alien armor, strange weapons, and medals of honor. The captain bowed before the princess. "His Majesty the Council has demanded that the human remain here as property of the crown," he declared. "He is a symbol of the Queen's victory." Lyria's voice trembled. "He is not property. He saved my life." The captain looked uneasy but obeyed his orders. "The Queen commands, Princess. The human will not leave the palace." Ethan felt anger rise, but he stayed silent. The guards left and Lyria stood frozen, her hands shaking. "She cannot do this," she whispered. "You are not her servant." "I already am," Ethan said quietly. "Every man who saves a royal becomes a prisoner of gratitude." Later that day, Ethan was summoned to the royal chamber. The throne room was vast, glowing with light that shifted color with the queen's mood. She sat on a throne made of crystal veins and black metal, wearing a crown that shimmered like flame. Her eyes were sharp, her voice smooth and heavy with power. "Human," she said, "you saved my daughter. For that I owe you a debt. But you cannot return to your people. You have seen too much of our world. You will remain under my protection." Ethan stood tall, his hands behind his back. "With respect, Your Majesty, protection feels a lot like captivity." The queen smiled faintly. "Call it what you wish. But if you walk outside this palace, there are nobles who would end your life before sunset. Here, at least, you will live." "I would rather die free than live locked away," Ethan said firmly. Her expression did not change, but the air around her grew heavy. "Humans speak of freedom as if it were air," she said. But freedom without purpose is chaos. You serve a purpose now. Your courage reminds my people that even enemies can have honor. I never asked to be a symbol, Ethan said. I only wanted to do the right thing. The Queen leaned forward slightly. Then do the right thing again. Stay. Obey. Protect my daughter not as a soldier but as a guardian of peace. Ethan met her gaze. Peace bought with chains is no peace at all. Her eyes narrowed, and for a moment he felt the strange pressure of her mind brushing his thoughts. Then she spoke softly. You speak like a warrior, but you forget whose world you stand upon. You will remain until I decide otherwise. 2 guards stepped forward and led him out. Lyria was waiting in the corridor, her eyes full of worry. What did she say? She asked. Ethan forced a smile. That I'm free to stay forever. Her expression fell. Then she will never let you go. He shrugged, trying to hide his frustration. We'll see. Queens have their pride. Maybe someday she'll see that humans aren't her enemies. Lyria shook her head. She doesn't see enemies, Ethan. She sees tools, and you are one she cannot replace. That evening, rain began to fall, strange silver drops that glowed when they touched the ground. The palace shimmered under the storm, and Ethan walked out into the garden, letting the alien rain wash over him. Lyria came to him again, holding a small lamp. You're not safe here, she said softly. There are whispers in the court. Some believe my mother plans to use you in her next campaign, to show that humans serve her will. Ethan turned to her. If she thinks that, she doesn't know me. Lyria looked away, tears catching the lamplight. I wish you had never saved me. Then you would be free. Ethan stepped closer. Don't say that. You were in danger. Any soldier would have done the same. She shook her head. No, you're not like them. You fight with heart, and that is what frightens her most. The wind carried the scent of metal and lightning. In the distance, thunder rolled like drums of war. Ethan looked up at the sky. Maybe I was never meant to go home, he said quietly. Maybe my fight's still here. Lyria looked at him, her voice almost breaking. Then I will fight with you. Whatever comes, he smiled faintly. Let's hope we won't need to. But even as he said it, he saw lights moving beyond the walls. Shadows of guards watching every step. He knew that soon he would have to choose between obedience and escape, between loyalty and freedom, between the will of a queen and the promise he had made to his own soul. And somewhere high above the storm, behind the tall towers of light, the queen stood on her balcony, watching them both through the rain. Her face was calm, but her eyes burned with the thought she could never say aloud. No human leaves my world without my command. The rain kept falling. The garden shimmered blue, and Ethan, the human who once fought for honor, realized he had walked into another kind of battlefield, one made not of guns and fire, but of hearts, loyalty, and invisible chains that no sword could cut. The palace of the Zarian queen grew quieter after the storm, but inside its living walls fear moved like a shadow. Ethan no longer saw the sky except through narrow glass corridors. Guards followed him everywhere now, silent and watchful. The queen had not spoken to him again since their last meeting, yet her presence seemed to fill every corner. Days turned into weeks. The alien capital healed from the war, but the scars in people's hearts remained. Humans were still seen as invaders, and Ethan knew that if he ever stepped outside the palace gates, he might never return alive. The queen called it protection, but every hour he felt the cage around him grow tighter. Lyria came to him less often now. The guards began to question her visits, and she looked tired, as if she carried a secret too heavy for her shoulders. One evening she brought him a meal and sat silently beside him. The glow of the twin moons shone on her silver skin. You haven't spoken in days, Ethan said softly. Lyria looked up. I hear things in the court. My mother's council fears you. They say if humans know our weaknesses, they will come again. They want you gone. Or dead. Ethan stayed calm, though his chest tightened. And what does your mother want? Lyria hesitated. She says she is protecting peace, but I think she's protecting her pride. You made her feel weak when you saved me. He looked away, watching the strange trees outside sway without wind. So saving a life made me an enemy? That's a new one. It's not fair, she said. You should have been honored, not imprisoned. I don't need honor, Ethan replied. Just the chance to leave. Lyria took something small from her sleeve. A crystal shard glowing faintly blue. This came from my crown, she said. It can open the gates for a few breaths before the palace seals again. It will recognize me and think you are with me. You can use it to escape." Ethan stared at the crystal, uncertain. "If your mother finds out, she'll punish you." "She already punishes me by keeping you locked here," she whispered. "You once risked your life for me. Let me return that." He reached out, closing her fingers gently around the shard. "You shouldn't get involved in this. I'll find another way." "There is no other way," Lyraya said quietly. "Every path in this palace leads back to her throne. Only this one leads out." That night, Ethan lay awake, staring at the ceiling that pulsed with alien light. The idea of freedom tempted him like a distant sunrise, but leaving meant betraying the one person who had shown him kindness. He thought about the day he saved her, the chaos, the fire, her terrified eyes as he carried her through the smoke. He hadn't done it for reward or politics. He had done it because she was someone in danger. That was all that mattered then. But now everything had changed. When dawn came, he made his choice. He slipped the crystal into his pocket and waited until the palace grew silent. The guards were changing shifts. The hallways were empty except for the hum of the living walls. He moved quietly through the corridors, his steps soft on the glowing floors. The gate at the far end of the courtyard shimmered with energy. He held up the crystal. The barrier flickered and began to open, its strange blue light bending around him. Just a few more steps and he would be outside, breathing free air for the first time in months. Then a voice echoed behind him, calm and cold. "Going somewhere, human?" He turned. The queen stood at the top of the steps, her long white robe shining under the alien suns. Behind her, soldiers formed a line of silver armor. Her eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the light of the gate. "So this is your gratitude," she said softly. "You save my daughter and reward me with betrayal." Ethan kept his tone steady. "I'm not betraying anyone. I just want to go home." "This world is your home now," she replied. "You live because I allow it." He stepped closer to the open gate. "That's not living. That's surviving under your command." Her expression hardened. "You think freedom belongs to you alone? You are a soldier of a race that burned half my world. You should be thankful I let you breathe." "I didn't fight to conquer," he said. "I fought to protect. And now you're proving why the war even began. Fear, control, pride. You can't rule everything by force." For a moment, silence filled the courtyard. The queen's guards shifted uneasily, unsure whether to move. Then the queen raised her hand and the air shimmered with power. The gate closed behind Ethan, sealing him in. "You will not leave," she said. "You will serve this house as long as I command." Ethan clenched his fists. "I'm not your servant," the queen's eyes flashed. "Then you are my prisoner." Guards advanced, but before they could touch him, Lyraya appeared from the shadows, running to his side. "Stop," she cried. "He only wanted to be free. He means no harm." The queen turned her gaze on her daughter, disappointment deep in her voice. "You helped him." Lyraya stood tall despite her trembling. "Yes, because you're wrong, mother. You say you protect peace, but all you protect is your power. He doesn't deserve this." The queen's tone grew quiet, dangerous. "You would defy your own blood for him?" "I would defy injustice for anyone," Lyraya said firmly. The queen's face darkened. "You are still young. You do not understand what happens when mercy leads to weakness. This human will be kept alive as a lesson, to remind our people that even kindness must bow to the crown." Ethan stepped forward. "If you want me to be your lesson, fine. But don't punish her." The queen's eyes softened just for a second, almost regretful. Then she nodded to her guards. "Take him back to his quarters. Double the watch. And bring my daughter to her room. She will learn silence again." The guards obeyed. Lyraya called out his name as they dragged him away, her voice echoing across the courtyard. He didn't resist. Fighting would only hurt her more. When they locked the door behind him, he sat alone in the dark. The room glowed faintly with blue veins running through the walls. He could still feel the queen's power in the air, like invisible chains pressing against his chest. He looked down at his hands, strong, scarred, but useless now. He thought of Lyraya locked in her chambers. He thought of the stars above that he might never see again. And deep inside, something shifted. Not anger, but determination. If he couldn't win his freedom, he would earn it through purpose. He would show this world what a human truly was. Not a conqueror, not a servant, but someone who fought for what was right even in the face of power. Days passed. The guards no longer spoke to him. Food came through silent drones. The queen did not summon him. But he began to learn the patterns of the palace, the hum of its living walls, the rhythm of its breathing halls, the voices of guards who thought he couldn't understand their language. He listened, memorized, planned. Then one night he heard footsteps outside. A soft knock came at the door. Before he could answer, the wall rippled open and Lyraya stepped through, pale and frightened. "I couldn't stay silent," she said. "She thinks she broke us, but she hasn't." Ethan stood surprised. "You shouldn't be here." "She doesn't watch this section at night anymore," she said quickly. "She believes you've given up. But we still have time. There's a secret passage through the lower chambers that leads to the old docks. My nurse told me about it when I was a child. We can reach it before dawn." Ethan shook his head slowly. "You'll be hunted if she finds out. You'll lose everything." "I already have," Lyraya said. "The only thing I can keep is my word, the promise that I will help the one who helped me." He looked at her, seeing not a princess but a soul brave enough to stand against her own blood. He wanted to argue, but he knew she was right. Together, they moved quietly through the corridor, past sleeping guards and humming lights. The air smelled of metal and rain. When they reached the lower levels, the floor trembled with distant thunder. Outside, the alien moons were fading as dawn approached. They stopped near a sealed door carved with royal symbols. Lyraya pressed the crystal shard against it. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the door pulsed and slid open with a hiss. Before they could step through, a voice filled the hall, deep, calm, and filled with power. "You disappoint me again, daughter." The queen stood at the far end of the corridor, her robe flowing like smoke, her guards behind her. Lyraya froze, fear flashing in her eyes. Ethan stepped in front of her. The queen looked at him with cold sadness. "You could have lived in peace, human. But you keep choosing defiance. Do you wish for death instead of mercy?" Ethan's voice was steady. "I don't wish for either. I wish for freedom, for both of us." The queen raised her hand and light began to gather around her fingers. "Then you will learn what it costs." The hall filled with blinding light as the air itself seemed to scream. Ethan pushed Lyraya behind him as the storm of energy descended, and in that instant he understood that escape was no longer enough. The real fight had just begun. The light from the queen's hand struck the floor like a falling star. The energy burst across the corridor, shaking the living walls and sending ripples of silver light through the air. Ethan threw himself forward, pulling Lyraya down behind a pillar as the blast tore through the passage. The heat burned his shoulder, but he did not let go of her. When the noise faded, smoke filled the corridor. The guards hesitated, afraid to step closer without the queen's command. Ethan coughed and helped Lyraya to her feet. "We need to move," he said quietly. She nodded, eyes wide with fear. The queen stepped through the smoke, calm as a statue. "You can't win, human. This palace is alive. Every wall hears me. Every gate obeys me." Ethan's voice was steady. "Then I'll teach it to listen to someone else." He grabbed Lyraya's hand and ran down the corridor. The walls shifted and tried to close, but she raised the glowing shard again, forcing them open with her will. Each doorway they passed sealed behind them, trapping the queen's guards farther away. They reached the lower chambers where the air smelled of dust and old engines. Strange machines lined the walls, relics from a time before the queen's rule. Lyraya pointed toward a narrow tunnel glowing faintly green. "That passage leads to the old hangar," she said. "From there we can reach the city." Ethan hesitated. "If we reach the city, what then? Your mother controls it all." "She doesn't control the people's hearts," Lyraya said. "They're tired of fear." Before they could move, alarms echoed above. The queen's voice filled the air, deep and sharp. "My daughter has chosen rebellion. The human has chosen death. Seal every exit." The walls shuddered. Doors slammed shut one by one. Ethan pushed Lyraya ahead, searching for another path. They climbed a metal ladder into an abandoned maintenance shaft. The hum of the palace's living systems grew louder, like the heartbeat of a creature waking from sleep. At the top of the ladder, they reached a circular chamber. In its center floated a sphere of light, the palace's control core. It pulsed slowly, reacting to their presence. Lyraya stepped closer, awe and fear in her eyes. "This is the heart of my mother's power," she whispered. "If we touch it, it can free the gates, or destroy us." Ethan studied the shifting light. "Then we don't have a choice." He placed his hand near the surface. The sphere responded instantly, its glow turning blue then white. The walls around them vibrated and the queen's voice echoed again, angrier this time. Stop, you don't understand what you're doing. Lariah looked up, tears in her eyes. She's coming. Then we finish this before she arrives. Ethan pushed his hand deeper into the light. Pain shot through his arm, spreading across his chest like fire, but he held on. The sphere's energy tried to reject him, a foreign mind intruding on a living system. He forced his thoughts to stay focused. Open the gates. Let us go. The sphere flickered wildly. The floor cracked. Lariah grabbed his arm. Ethan, stop, it's killing you. He grit his teeth. I've felt worse. Just a little more. Suddenly, the chamber burst open as the queen arrived, her robes whipping through the air. Power radiated from her body like a storm. She raised her hand, ready to strike, but froze when she saw the light changing color. Enough, she shouted. You'll destroy the palace. Then maybe it needs to fall, Ethan said through clenched teeth. The queen's eyes blazed with fury and something else. Fear. She thrust her hand forward, sending a wave of energy toward him, but Lariah stepped in front of him, spreading her arms. The blast hit her square in the chest. Lariah! Ethan caught her as she fell, her body glowing faintly where the energy struck. She looked up at him, pain clouding her eyes. Don't stop, she whispered. Finish it. Ethan's heart pounded. He laid her gently on the floor and turned back to the core. You want to control everything, he said to the queen, but you can't control me. He pressed his palm against the light again. The sphere turned golden, then cracked with a thunderous sound. All around the palace, doors burst open, chains dissolved, and the walls shivered as if waking from a long dream. The gates of the royal city flared with bright light. The queen fell to one knee, gasping. What have you done? Ethan turned to her. I gave your people back their freedom. The light from the sphere exploded outward, knocking them both to the ground. When the brightness faded, the chamber was half destroyed. The once smooth walls were broken, the air filled with dust and sparks. Ethan crawled to Lariah. Her breathing was weak but steady. He tore a strip from his sleeve and pressed it against her wound, whispering softly, Stay with me. You're going to be fine. The queen rose slowly, her face pale. You don't understand, human. You've released the old systems. The palace is no longer mine, and it listens to no one now. Ethan looked up at her. Then maybe it's finally free too. The queen stared at him, torn between anger and disbelief. You'd risk everything, and even your own life, for something as fragile as freedom? Ethan nodded. That's what makes it worth risking for. Silence filled the broken chamber. For the first time, the queen's voice lost its command. You remind me of the first explorers who came to our world, she said softly. They spoke of honor, courage, mercy. I thought those were lies. They're not lies, Ethan said. They're choices. You can still make them. Before she could answer, explosions echoed from outside. The rebellion that had been brewing across the empire had reached the capital. Shouts and energy blasts filled the distance. The queen's eyes widened in realization. They're coming for me, she said. The people think I'm dead or fallen. The city will burn. Then stop it, Ethan said. You're still their queen. Show them something better. She looked down at her daughter lying motionless, then at the human kneeling beside her. Slowly, she lowered her head. Help me move her, she said quietly. If the people see her alive, they might still listen. Together, they lifted Lariah and carried her through the shattered corridors. The palace's living walls no longer obeyed commands. They moved randomly, closing and opening paths on their own. The light was fading and the sound of battle outside grew louder. When they reached the balcony overlooking the city, the view took Ethan's breath away. Thousands of lights burned below, ships, fires, people. The queen stepped forward and raised her voice, amplified by the palace's remnants. My people, she called, her tone firm but filled with sorrow. Your queen still stands. I have seen the courage of another world. I have seen what mercy costs, and what it can save. The crowd quieted. The fighting stopped. Ethan stood beside her, holding Lariah in his arms. The queen turned toward him. You have changed my world, human. Even if it kills me, I will not forget. Moments later, the balcony trembled as a final explosion ripped through the lower towers. The queen pushed Ethan and Lariah back as part of the platform collapsed. She fell to her knees, clutching the railing. Go, she shouted. Save her! Ethan tried to grab her hand, but the ground split between them. She looked at him one last time, her face calm now. Protect her, soldier. That is my command, and my apology. The platform gave way, and she disappeared into the light below. Ethan carried Lyraya through the smoke as the palace began to crumble. Outside, rebel ships flew overhead, their lights cutting through the dawn. He found a small shuttle still intact near the old docks. As he placed her inside, she stirred, whispering weakly, "My mother." Ethan's voice broke. "She saved us." Lyraya closed her eyes, tears mixing with the dust on her face. "Then maybe she finally understood you." The shuttle engines roared to life. Ethan looked out the window as the palace burned, its shining towers collapsing like stars falling from the sky. The Queen's empire had ended, but something new was beginning, something that no crown could control. He took Lyraya's hand gently. "Hold on, we're going home." The shuttle rose into the stormy sky, leaving behind the ruins of the old world. For the first time in a long while, Ethan felt hope. He didn't know where they would go or what awaited them, but he knew one thing: he would protect her again. Not because of orders or duty, but because that was who he was. Far below, the light of the dying palace flickered one last time as if saying farewell, and in that silent goodbye, the story of a soldier and a princess became something greater. A promise between two hearts from different worlds who refused to let fear decide their fate. The shuttle moved through the pale clouds, shaking as bursts of light flared far below. The once mighty capital of the Zarian Empire burned quietly under the rising suns. Ethan sat beside the pilot seat, his hands still trembling from the chaos. Beside him, Lyraya lay on a medical bed, her face pale but breathing steady. The soft hum of the engines was the only sound left between them. He kept checking her pulse, afraid it might fade again. Each time he touched her wrist and felt that faint rhythm, he let out a quiet breath of relief. Outside, the stars slowly returned, free of smoke and war. For the first time since his arrival on this world, Ethan saw the true color of its sky, silver blue with two suns glowing like twin hearts. Hours passed before Lyraya opened her eyes. Her voice was soft, weak but alive. "We escaped," she whispered. Ethan smiled faintly. "We did. The palace is gone." Her eyes filled with tears. "And my mother?" He paused for a moment, then said gently, "She saved us. She stopped fighting in the end." Lyraya turned her face toward the window. She was proud, too proud to say sorry, but she did in her own way. Silence followed. The shuttle drifted high above the burning city. Ethan didn't know what future awaited them. He had no ship, no army, no home to return to. Yet for the first time, he didn't feel lost. When night came, they landed in the valley outside the capital. The sky was filled with falling ash that glowed like snow. The valley had once been a training ground for royal soldiers, but now it was quiet. Ethan built a small fire near the shuttle and gathered food from the survival packs. Lyraya sat beside him, wrapped in a gray cloak, staring at the flames. "Will your people forgive you?" he asked. She shook her head slowly. "I don't know. They may see me as a traitor. But maybe some will remember what my mother said before the end. Maybe they will want something different now." Ethan poked the fire with a stick. Change is slow, but it always starts with someone brave enough to take the first step. Lyraya looked at him. "That's what you did." He smiled a little. "I only did what felt right." She tilted her head. "That's what makes you different from everyone I've known. You don't act for power or reward. You act because you can't walk away." The wind blew softly through the valley, carrying the faint scent of rain. For a while they sat in silence, listening to the quiet world around them. The war was over, but the universe had not yet decided what peace would look like. Over the next few days, Ethan and Lyraya repaired the shuttle and explored the nearby settlements. Many alien refugees had fled the capital, searching for food and safety. When they saw Lyraya, they bowed in confusion and fear. She didn't wear her royal robe anymore. She spoke to them with simple words, offering help, medicine, and promises of a new beginning. Ethan watched her and saw how the people began to change. The hatred that once filled their eyes slowly faded. Some even offered to rebuild the nearby villages. He saw hope return like green sprouts after a fire. One night, as they stood on a Hill overlooking the valley, Lyria said quietly. The people need a leader. Not a queen with a crown, but someone who understands them. Ethan looked at her. Then you should lead them. She smiled faintly. Would they follow a girl who lost her mother and her throne? They'll follow someone who gives them hope, he said. That's worth more than any throne. She looked up at the stars, her eyes bright. And you? When the humans come for you, will you go? He thought for a long time before answering. Maybe. But if I leave now, who will make sure they don't repeat the same mistakes? I came here as a soldier. Maybe it's time I stay as something else. Her voice softened. A guardian. He nodded. A friend. Days turned into weeks. Together they built a small outpost where survivors could gather. Humans from the outer colonies eventually sent a ship after receiving Ethan's emergency signal. When it landed, soldiers in silver suits stepped out, shocked to see him alive. Their commander saluted him. We thought you were gone, Lieutenant. Not yet, Ethan replied with a faint grin. The commander looked at Lyria and then at the ruins of the alien capital visible far in the distance. Is this the one you saved? Ethan nodded. Yes, and she saved me back. The commander lowered his weapon slightly. Our orders are to take any remaining Zarians for questioning. They'll want to know what happened here. Lyria's expression darkened. Ethan stepped between them. No one takes her anywhere. The war is over. She's not a prisoner. The commander hesitated. You're risking court-martial for this. Then I'll risk it, Ethan said. There was a long silence. Finally, the commander sighed. We'll report that the princess is under your protection, but you'll have to stay here as liaison between our people and hers. It's not safe to return to Earth yet. Ethan nodded. That's fine by me. After the soldiers left supplies and returned to orbit, the valley grew quiet again. Ethan and Lyria stood watching the human ship rise into the clouds. She turned to him with a small smile. You gave up your freedom for me again. He shook his head. No. This time, I chose it. They built new shelters from the wreckage of the shuttle and the ruins nearby. With help from both humans and aliens who slowly began to trust each other, the valley became a place of peace, a small colony shared by two species once at war. Months passed. The seasons changed. Children played near the river that ran beside. The settlement and old songs were sung again under the twin suns. Ethan taught the alien guards basic human defense drills, and Lyria taught human engineers how to use the living stone technology of her people. The world slowly healed. Sometimes at night, Ethan sat alone under the stars, looking up at the sky where the Queen's palace once stood. He remembered her last words, protect her. He had kept that promise, but he also knew he was protecting something bigger now, the fragile peace between their worlds. One evening, as he watched the stars, Lyria came and sat beside him. You still think about her, don't you? She asked softly. Ethan nodded. She was a strong woman. Flawed, proud, but she loved you in her own way. She never understood love until it was too late, Lyria said. But maybe her final act gave it meaning. The wind rustled through the tall silver grass. For a moment, everything felt calm. Then Lyria spoke again. There will come a day when humans and my people will meet again, not as enemies, but as travelers. When that day comes, they'll tell stories about a soldier who refused to bow to fear. Ethan smiled quietly. If they do, I hope they also remember the princess who taught him courage. She laughed softly, her eyes reflecting the firelight. Then maybe the story will never end. Years later, the valley became known as the Crossing, a symbol of unity between human and alien. Travelers came from distant stars to see where peace had begun, and at its center stood a monument, a simple stone carved with two words written in both languages. We chose. No crown, no empire, no name carved above it, just the truth of what they had done together. Ethan grew older, his hair turning gray under the alien suns. Lyria remained graceful, her kind aging slowly, but she never left his side. Together they watched the world they had rebuilt grow strong. When humans and Zarians finally formed an alliance, the first joint flag was raised in the valley where they once hid. On that day, as the anthem of two worlds echoed across the hills, Ethan stood beside Leia, feeling the same warmth he once felt holding her hand in the darkness of war. He looked at her and whispered, "We did it." She smiled. "You did." He shook his head. "We both did." The suns dipped low, painting the valley gold. The children of both species ran through the fields, laughing. The air carried no sound of war, only the soft hum of life continuing. And somewhere deep, in the ruins of the old palace now covered by time, the last spark of the Queen's power glowed quietly, not in anger or command, but as a memory of what she had learned. That freedom cannot be taken, only given, and that the human who had once been her prisoner had freed not only her world, but her heart. As night settled, Ethan and Leia stood watching the stars. The same stars that once marked their battles now marked their peace. He reached for her hand. She did not pull away. Together, they looked toward the sky, where the light of Earth and Zaria shone side by side. And in that quiet moment beneath the twin suns, the story that began with captivity ended with choice. The choice to forgive, to rebuild, and to stand together. Because even across galaxies, some promises never die.